Welcome to Empathy Stories, where we explore tales that touch the heart and remind us of the bonds that shape our lives. Today, we delve into the extraordinary story of a veteran and his loyal war dog, a journey of healing, trust, and the enduring power of connection. Let's begin. The sky blushed in hues of orange and purple as the Colorado sun set behind the rugged Rocky Mountains. Alex Carter trudged through the narrow streets of his small town, his well-worn boots scuffing the pavement. Each step echoed the weight of his past, the memories of war that clung to him like a second skin. At 37, Alex bore the invisible scars of combat, moments of danger, loss, and camaraderie that now felt like distant shadows in the calm of civilian life. But tonight, there was a flicker of hope, a chance for a reunion that might just mend the fractures within him. The modest animal shelter stood at the edge of town, its rusted chain-link fences enclosing a chorus of barking dogs. The faint scent of disinfectant mingled with the chill of the evening air. Alex hesitated at the entrance, his hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets. It wasn't his idea to come here. His sister Emily had insisted. She believed adopting a dog might help Alex find a sense of purpose again. He doubted it. Still, there was something, perhaps desperation, perhaps a glimmer of longing, that had brought him here tonight. Inside, the shelter buzzed with muted activity. Volunteers moved between rows of cages, tending to the animals. Alex scanned the kennels, his sharp eyes assessing the dogs. Most barked enthusiastically, tails wagging in an earnest bid for his attention. Others sat quietly, their eyes filled with resignation. But none of them stirred anything in Alex's chest. No recognition, no connection. Just as he turned to leave, a young shelter worker approached him. "Mr. Carter, right? We have a German Shepherd in the back. He's a bit special. Would you like to meet him?" A German Shepherd. Alex's breath caught. Without a word, he followed her down a dimly lit corridor to a secluded area of the shelter. His heart thudded as the worker stopped in front of a cage. Inside, lying in the far corner, was a large dog with black and tan fur. His posture was rigid, his body scarred, and his eyes, oh, those eyes were distant, hollow, as if they had seen too much. "Shadow," Alex whispered, his voice trembling. He stepped closer, his throat tightening. The dog turned his head, his gaze meeting Alex's for the briefest moment before shifting away. There was no spark of recognition, no wagging tail, no acknowledgement of the man who had once been his partner in life and death situations. The shelter worker's voice softened. "He's been through a lot. We found him abandoned at another shelter. He's wary of people, suffers from anxiety. It's clear he's experienced trauma. He doesn't recognize me," Alex murmured, his chest aching. Memories of their shared missions, their unspoken bond, flashed before him. Shadow had once been his lifeline, his companion in the chaos of war. Now, that connection seemed severed. But Alex wasn't ready to give up. "Can I spend some time with him?" he asked, his voice firm despite the storm of emotions inside him. The worker nodded. "We can take him to the play yard." In the enclosed yard, Alex knelt down, extending a hand toward Shadow. "Hey, boy, it's me. It's Alex." His tone was gentle, almost pleading. Shadow stayed rooted to the spot, his muscles tense. He sniffed the air but didn't approach, his body language a tapestry of mistrust and caution. Alex's heart ached with every passing second, but he knew better than to force it. He simply sat there, quietly, giving Shadow the space he needed. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the yard. Alex finally stood, his decision clear. "I'm taking him home," he said to the shelter worker. "No matter how long it takes, I'll bring him back." The drive to Alex's small house on the outskirts of town was silent. Shadow lay on a blanket in the back seat, his gaze fixed out the window. Alex glanced at him through the rearview mirror, his mind swirling with determination and doubt. What if Shadow never remembered? What if the dog he once knew was gone forever? When they arrived, Alex opened the truck door and coaxed Shadow out. The German Shepherd moved cautiously, his every step measured. Inside, Alex had prepared a cozy corner with a new dog bed, fresh water, and a few toys. "This is your spot," he said, gesturing toward the setup. Shadow stood in the middle of the room, unmoving, his gaze darting around the unfamiliar space. That night, Alex left his bedroom door ajar, hoping Shadow might feel comfortable enough to approach. But as he lay in the dark, he heard the soft padding of paws. Shadow stopped just outside the door. Lying down with a sigh, Alex smiled faintly, the smallest spark of hope igniting in his chest. It was a start. The next morning, Alex found Shadow sitting by the living room window, staring out at the mist-covered yard. The dog seemed lost in his thoughts, a mirror of Alex's own inner turmoil. "We're both a bit broken." "Huh," Alex said softly. Shadow didn't respond, but Alex felt a flicker of connection, fragile and tentative. He spent the day trying to engage Shadow, tossing a ball, offering treats, even sitting on the floor near him. Each attempt was met with indifference or hesitation. Yet Alex refused to give up. He understood the weight of trust, how long it took to rebuild something shattered. As the sun set that evening, Alex watched Shadow from the porch, the dog's silhouette framed by the last light of day. "I'm not giving up on you," Alex murmured into the cool air. "Not now. Not ever." The journey was just beginning. But Alex knew that beneath Shadow's guarded exterior lay the heart of the loyal partner he had once known. It would take time, patience, and unwavering love to reach it. And Alex was ready. The crisp Colorado air carried the faint smell of pine as Alex Carter stood on his porch, a steaming cup of coffee in hand. His gaze followed Shadow as the German Shepherd cautiously explored the yard. The dog's movements were deliberate, his body language perpetually on high alert, as if the open space could suddenly betray him. It had been days since Alex had brought Shadow home, and though progress was slow, the veteran held on to hope, determined to bridge the chasm between them. Alex decided to try something that might awaken Shadow's memories. In the back of his closet, buried beneath old uniforms and keepsakes, lay a weathered military vest. It was the very one Alex had worn during their missions together, a vest that carried the scent of the battlefield, of sweat and adrenaline, and of the bond they had shared. Alex carried it outside, his heart racing with anticipation. He knelt in the yard, holding the vest out toward Shadow. "Do you remember this, buddy?" he asked softly. Shadow stopped sniffing the grass and turned his gaze toward Alex. His ears perked slightly as he eyed the vest, but he made no move to approach. Alex placed it on the ground and stepped back, giving the dog space. For a long moment, Shadow remained still, his body tense. Then, cautiously, he inched forward. He sniffed the vest, his nostrils flaring as he processed the familiar scent. Alex held his breath, willing the dog to connect the dots. But just as quickly as Shadow approached, he recoiled, retreating with his tail tucked low. The glimmer of recognition faded, replaced by the familiar veil of mistrust. Alex's shoulders slumped. "It's okay," he murmured, more to himself than to Shadow. "We'll get there." Later that evening, as the sky darkened and the first stars emerged, Alex sat on the floor of his living room, sorting through a box of mementos, photographs, letters, and medals spilled across the carpet, each one a fragment of a life that felt both distant and immediate. Among the items, Alex found an old rubber ball, worn and scuffed from years of use. It had been Shadow's favorite, a source of endless energy and joy during their downtime in the field. With the ball in hand, Alex approached Shadow, who lay near the kitchen door, his eyes half closed but watchful. Alex rolled the ball gently across the floor, letting it come to a stop near the dog. "Come on, boy. Remember this?" he said, his voice filled with quiet encouragement. Shadow's ears twitched, and his eyes followed the ball's path. For a moment, Alex thought he saw a flicker of interest, a spark of recognition. But Shadow didn't move. The ball remained untouched, a symbol of a bond that once was. Frustration bubbled within Alex, but he pushed it down. He knew this wasn't about him. Shadow's journey back to trust and connection would take time, just as Alex's own healing had. He placed the ball beside Shadow and returned to his seat, letting the dog take the lead. The breakthrough came the next morning. Alex woke to the sound of soft footsteps in the hallway. He looked up to find Shadow standing in the doorway of his bedroom, his eyes fixed on Alex with an intensity he hadn't seen before. "Morning, boy," Alex said gently. Sitting up, Shadow didn't move closer, but he didn't retreat either. Instead, he sat down, his posture relaxed but alert. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. Encouraged, Alex decided to take Shadow for a walk. He retrieved the dog's old military tag, cleaned it, and attached it to a new collar. As he fastened the leash, he noticed Shadow's body stiffen, his muscles taut with tension. "It's okay," Alex reassured him, stroking the dog's back. "We're just going for a walk. Nothing to worry about." The two stepped out into the crisp morning air, the leash taut as Shadow kept a cautious distance. They walked along the dirt road that wound through Alex's property, the mountains rising majestically in the distance. Shadow sniffed the air constantly, his body language wary but curious. As they reached the edge of the yard, Alex stopped and crouched down, holding out his hand. "You're safe here, Shadow," he said softly. "No one's going to hurt you. I promise." Shadow hesitated, his gaze flickering between Alex and the horizon. Then, slowly, he took a step closer. His nose brushed against Alex's outstretched hand, and Alex felt a surge of emotion. It was the first time Shadow had initiated contact since their reunion. "You're a brave boy," Alex whispered, his voice thick with gratitude. He didn't push for more, letting Shadow retreat when he was ready. It was enough for now. That evening, as Alex sat on the porch watching the sunset, Shadow lay at his feet. The dog's body was relaxed, his breathing steady. Alex reached down cautiously, his hand hovering over Shadow's head before gently resting on his fur. Shadow didn't flinch or pull away. Instead, he closed his eyes, a sign of trust that sent a wave of warmth through Alex. "We're getting there," Alex said quietly, a smile tugging at his lips. One step at a time. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, Alex felt like they were truly moving forward. Both man and dog carried the weight of their pasts, but together, they were finding a way to heal. And in that moment, under the Colorado sky, Alex knew he had made the right choice in bringing Shadow home. The morning sunlight spilled across the yard as Alex Carter sipped his coffee on the porch, his gaze fixed on Shadow. The German Shepherd was sitting in the grass, ears perked and tail still, as if he were meditating on some unspoken truth. Over the weeks, small victories had begun to stack up. Shadow now followed Alex from room to room, accepting treats directly from his hand and occasionally resting closer during quiet moments in the living room. But today, Alex wanted to try something new, something that might rekindle the bond they had shared. From a shelf in his garage, he retrieved a well-worn military whistle, its edges dulled by years of use. The last time he had used it was during their missions. The sound a beacon for Shadow to return to his side, no matter what chaos surrounded them. Standing in the yard, Alex took a deep breath and blew 2 short bursts, the sharp sound slicing through the crisp morning air. Shadow's ears immediately shot up, and his body tensed. For a long moment, he didn't move, his gaze fixed on Alex as though trying to piece together a puzzle buried deep within his memory. "Come on, boy," Alex called, his voice calm but edged with hope. He held his hand out, the whistle dangling from his fingers. "You remember this?" Shadow hesitated, his muscles taut as if caught between instinct and uncertainty. Then, cautiously, he took a step forward, his head tilted slightly, his gaze flickering between the whistle and Alex's face. It wasn't the bounding, eager response Alex had once known, but it was something, a spark. Alex knelt, careful not to break the fragile connection. "That's it," he murmured. "Good boy." Shadow inched closer, sniffing the air around Alex's outstretched hand. Finally, he nudged the whistle with his nose, a faint wag of his tail betraying the first hint of excitement Alex had seen in weeks. "You do remember," Alex whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He didn't push for more, letting Shadow retreat when he was ready. The German Shepherd settled a few feet away, watching Alex with eyes that no longer seemed quite so haunted. That afternoon, Alex decided to test the waters further. In the yard, he set up a simple obstacle course using logs, barrels, and a few makeshift hurdles. It was nothing compared to the grueling training Shadow had endured during their service. But it was enough to stir a sense of purpose, something Alex knew they both needed. Standing at the starting point, Alex held the rubber ball in one hand and the whistle in the other. "Let's see what you've got, partner," he said, his tone light but laced with anticipation. He threw the ball across the course and blew a single, sharp note on the whistle. Shadow hesitated for only a second before taking off. His movements were tentative at first, but as he navigated the obstacles, something shifted. His body became more fluid, his steps more confident. By the time he reached the ball, his tail was wagging, a subtle but undeniable sign of joy. "Good boy," Alex called, clapping his hands. Shadow returned with the ball, dropping it at Alex's feet before looking up. His ears perked and his eyes bright. Alex knelt and stroked Shadow's head, the dog leaning into the touch for the first time. "You've still got it," Alex said, smiling through the lump in his throat. For the first time in years, he felt like he wasn't just surviving, he was living. The bond continued to grow in the days that followed. Shadow began to greet Alex at the door, his tail wagging in earnest. He slept at the foot of Alex's bed, a silent guardian in the quiet of the night. And during their walks, he no longer hesitated to explore, his posture relaxed and his eyes curious. The true turning point came one stormy evening. Thunder rumbled across the sky as rain lashed against the windows. Alex was sitting on the couch, flipping through an old photo album. Shadow lay nearby, his head resting on his paws, when Alex turned a page and paused on a photo of them together during a mission. Shadow's ears perked up. "You remember this, don't you?" Alex said, holding the album where Shadow could see it. The dog sniffed the page, his eyes lingering on the image. Alex reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and scratched behind Shadow's ears. This time, Shadow didn't pull away. As the storm outside raged, Alex felt a quiet peace settle over the room. He leaned back, his hand resting on Shadow's head, and closed his eyes. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" he murmured. The next morning, Alex decided it was time to return to the place where their journey had begun. They drove to a nearby park, a spot they had frequented during their off-duty days. The air was crisp, the grass damp from the previous night's rain. Alex opened the truck door, and Shadow leapt out, his tail wagging as he took in the familiar surroundings. Alex pulled the rubber ball from his pocket and held it up. "Ready, boy." With a flick of his wrist, he sent the ball soaring across the field. Shadow took off like a bullet, his body moving with the grace and power Alex had almost forgotten. He retrieved the ball and sprinted back, dropping it at Alex's feet with a triumphant bark. Alex knelt, his hands cupping Shadow's face as he looked into the dog's eyes. "You're back," he said, his voice breaking. "You're really back." As they played under the Colorado sky, Alex felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Shadow wasn't just his dog or his partner. He was a symbol of resilience, of the power of love and patience to heal even the deepest wounds. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Alex placed a hand on Shadow's back. "We got a lot of life ahead of us, partner," he said softly. Shadow leaned into him, his tail wagging gently. For the first time in years, Alex felt whole. Together, he and Shadow had found their way back to each other. And in doing so, they had rediscovered a purpose that neither had realized they'd lost. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt journey of love, resilience, and redemption. If this story inspired you, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need a little hope today. Don't forget to subscribe to Empathy Stories for more touching narratives. And let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Together, we can celebrate the strength found in connection and compassion. See you next time.